Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my annual ranking what I read last year. It is now 2023, Happy New Year, so I'm going to be ranking what I read in 2022. But first I'm going to go through the list of books that I wanted to read this year, which I didn't really follow, so let's just get into it. So I'm just kind of gonna go rapid fire through this in the hopes that this won't be a super long video. And I'm not gonna say which ones I ended up reading and which ones I didn't. I only ended up reading probably less than half of them. I wanted to do better with reading the actual books I had on my physical TBR, which I'm doing a challenge on, trying to read just the books on my physical TBR. Go check that out on the book talk, which is Stories Books. Yeah, so I'm gonna do these rapid fire and then you'll see when I go through the ranking which ones I ended up reading and which ones I didn't. There were a couple complications which I will say very quickly, but. So what I wanted to read this year was Caraval by Stephanie Garber, Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, Scythe by Neil Schusterman. Also, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce any of these. One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus, The Host by Stephanie Meyer. That one was a complication because I started reading it, and by started I mean like 2 sentences, and then I questioned if I want to read that one, and I've always been meaning to read it, but I feel like it's not my preferred genre. It's like a science fiction. So leave me a comment down below if you think it's worth reading. I've heard very mixed reviews of it's really good and it kind of sucks. So just let me know what you guys think on that one. Also, Janelle has a new cat. Need to preface by saying that. His name's Miso. He is adorable. He would also like inside. However, he plays with the backdrop. So he is currently outside. He's not thrilled about it. I wanted to reread Slated by Terry, which is one of my favorite series growing up, but I never read the last one and I own it, so I just want to kind of reread the whole series, plus it's short. I want to read the 4th Miss Peregrine's A Map of Days. I didn't get to that one because first of all, I don't own it. Second of all, I don't remember the first 3 Miss Peregrines because I thought he was done after 3, but all of a sudden there was more. Anyways, I want to read Stain by A.G. Howard. I've been trying to get through that book since 2020, but I'm so bad at DNFing, I just can't. So eventually, that was me so. Eventually I'm going to get through Stain, maybe this year. Read Nil on Fire by Lynn Matson. Nil was again one of my favorite books growing up, and I read the first one and the second one. Always waited to find the third one in a bookstore, never found it, so I just kind of like cracked and bought it online. And I got 70 pages into it, and I just don't remember the first 2, and I think it would be so much cooler. Like, it sounds like a really interesting concept, but I think it'd be more interesting if I read the first 2 first, so I'm gonna do that. Also, I should say, if you guys know of any websites that have good, like, book summaries, and I mean, like, the whole book, like, not just, like, the blurb of what the book is about, but like everything that happens, let me know, because that would save me a lot of time. I want to finish a lot of series, but I don't have to go through and reread all of the first ones. I wanted to read The Girl in the Train by Paula Hawkins, Gone Girl by Jillian Flynn, Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. I got about 100 pages into that one and then I stopped because I feel like it's like a summer read, and I was trying to read it like a month ago, so I'm gonna wait and read it next summer. One Was Lost by Natalie D. Richards, The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which obviously I've read because I have a review, go check that out. The Unleashed, which is the second book of The Haunted by Danielle Vega, who is one of my favorite authors of all time. I did a review of her series The Merciless, which is also on the channel. White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson, The Whisper Man by Alex North, The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, Delirium by Lauren Oliver, Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell, and The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. You'd think because that last name's in the City of Bones I could have said that. Anyways, that's what I wanted to read. I read probably less than 10 of them. You will see what I ended up reading. I kind of made my list stupid because there was ones I already knew I wanted to read. The second Caraval, which I actually didn't get to. The second Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and NOS 4A2 by Joe Hill. And NOS 4A2 is a Christmas horror story, and so I ordered it specifically for Christmas. And then I just got so busy with exams and finishing like buying gifts and stuff that it was Christmas Eve and I was on page 20 and I thought it was a 400 page book and it's 700 pages. So I decided I'm just gonna wait and read it next year, which kind of sucks because literally last Boxing Day of 2021, I found out about NOS 482 and I was like, I literally had a reminder in my phone for a full year to read this book at Christmas, and then just by the time I got to it, it was too late. So anyways, now I'm gonna go through and very quickly talk about the ranking that I did for the books that I did read this year. Full disclosure, I read 24 books this year, not counting school books. If you look at my Goodreads challenge, which is just under my name, Larissa Story, if you wanna go be my friend on Goodreads, I am a sucker for Goodreads. I know some people hate it, I love it. And my challenge was 50 books because I was counting school books. I did count school books. I read 51, I think, or maybe 50. I think I read 51. Oh my God. I read 51 books this year, counting school books. I read 24 on my own. One of them was a 60-page falling down the stairs. One of them was a 60-page one that I found for free online. Anyways, we'll get into that because I don't even remember where I found it. I should have looked that up, but yeah, I'll just get into it. So number 24, I'm going from last to first. Number 24 on my list is The Grown Up by Jillian Flynn. I love Gillian Flynn. Sharp Objects is one of my favorite books of all time. She's most famously known for Gone Girl, which is also in this pile. That's one I did get to this year. The back literally says you like ghost stories. It was $13 and it was 60 pages, so that's like kind of expensive for a book because I read it in an hour. But I've heard so many good things about it. I was really intrigued. What? Anyways, I didn't love it. I found it quite misleading at times. It definitely was creepy, but it was one of those endings. I don't want to spoil it, but the ending was like, didn't really like make any of it make any sense, if that makes sense. It was just kind of like, wouldn't it be weird if this happened? And it did happen. Oh, just kidding, it didn't. Or did it? It's like, that was just kind of what the ending was like, and I don't know. I just didn't love that, so. Yeah, and I think also just because it's shorter, it goes to the bottom of the pile. It was an interesting read, but the price compared to the page number, I don't know that this would be worth it, in my opinion. I also don't like pocketbooks. I don't like, it's short, I don't want to talk about it. And I've never seen that one in a bookstore. I got it from Amazon. Just saying, because it's hard to find places. Number 23 on my list is I Know What You Did Last Summer by Lois Duncan. This is obviously what the famous movie was based off of. If you enjoy the storyline of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I think there's a Prime show out there too. If you enjoy that, you're probably not going to enjoy this. It is very similar concept for the whole beginning, where something happens and then a bunch of teenagers try to cover it up, and then one of them receives a note saying, I know what you did last summer, so someone knows their secret. The movie is like a slasher. It's a horror movie. Someone's getting revenge for what happened last summer. And this one is like, oh my gosh, isn't that creepy? And then like nothing happens. Like, it was basically realistic fiction. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a little bit of a thriller, but yeah, it's not a slasher. That's what I thought it was, and this was boring, in my opinion. This one makes me sad. Number 22 is Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw, K-H-A-W. This one's another expensive one. This one's $17 and it was 120 pages or something. So I've been putting this one off for years. That was a big one. Anywho, I've been putting this one off for years because of the price to page ratio, same thing. And the reviews were like not great. I think it has like a 2.73, 2.74 or something on Goodreads and a 5. That was accurate. I rated it 2 stars. I rated it 3 and then I thought about it for like 10 minutes and then I rated it 2 stars. So again, for the price to page point, not really worth it. My main problem with this book, which is kind of just a personal problem, is that it takes place in a haunted house in Japan, and there's a lot of Japanese art styles and like animal shapes and folklore, but none of it was explained. It was like talking about how there was blank on the wall, and I was like, what is that? And I had to Google it, and it was like a word for a Japanese raccoon or something was one of them. And I was like, okay. And then the next word, I was like, I don't know what that means. And it was a fox, a Japanese fox. And then it's like wearing a blank. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And I looked it up and it was a type of robe. Like stuff like that, that none of it was explained. and then I just got bored of looking up all the words, so then a lot of the times I would just like skim. And it's supposed to be a horror. It is scary, there's lots of frightening imagery in it, but I feel like it's much more about grief, which I just realized is on the back. Like, people had said it was about grief, but I thought it was more horror than that. So anyways, yeah. So now I can say I've finally done it, because it was always on my bucket list if I wanted to read it and see for myself, because some people love it, some people don't. But yeah, it's fine. Number 21 is Mary Will I Die by Sean Sarles, I think is how you pronounce his last name. I like horror, hello, obviously. The only thing that really scared me growing up was the Paranormal Activity movies and Bloody Mary, specifically. I don't even want to say her name twice. I'm still scared of that concept. So obviously that's kind of what this is about. And it was fine. I think it's just too YA for me at this point, which I gotta stop doing that. I have more by this author, so I'm interested to see what his writing style is like just in general. But yeah, I just found it was very like basic YA, even though it was Bloody Mary, which scares me. I still didn't find I was that scared by it, so. Number 20, I was very excited about, and I just read a lot of good books this year. I might want to switch those. I want to switch these. Number 20 on my list, because I just swapped, is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar, maybe. This is just exactly what it sounds like. It's a YA slasher horror, but a clown in a cornfield. There were definitely some like scary imagery, and there was a pretty good like plot twists and that sort. Like the plot was interesting, but it is exactly what you'd imagine it would be. This was also the first book I tried tabbing with like actual colors. I've decided that tabbing isn't for me because I'm too particular about it. Like I want them all out the same length, and so then I just gave up. But it's pretty, so anyways, yeah. This was interesting. At first I thought I was gonna read the second one. Now I don't think I will. I might. I'm just bad with not finishing series that I don't like, because I feel like I should see them through. And it did end like on a little bit of a cliffhanger, but you wouldn't have to read the second one if you read this one. And there was a plot twist in it. Okay, number 19 is Fairest of All by Serena Valentino. I was so excited for this one. I've owned this for more than 7 years. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Anyways, I own this one, The Beast Within, and Poor Unfortunate Soul. So obviously The Beast from Beauty and the Beast and Ursula from The Little Mermaid. There's like 7 of them, I think. She's done one every year. This was, I know too many stats on this. This one came out in 2009. The Beast Within came out in 2014, and then one came out in 2016, and then she's put out one every year since. The next one that's coming out is Hercules, but there's really cool ones with like Mother Gothel that I really want to read. But anyways, I found out just recently that they're all kind of connected, so you need to read them in the order they came out. You can't just pick certain villains, which made me much more interested in reading it. So then after 7 years, when I was like, I need a short book to finish my reading challenge, this was the one that I picked. And I was like pleasantly surprised by it, especially now that I've like finished it and like sat on it a little bit. I'm like, that was good. I take off the dust jackets when I'm reading. So what was cool is that obviously that's the evil queen from Snow White, but when you take off the dust jacket, it's like her little goblin witch that she turns into to give Snow White the apple. So yeah, it was really interesting, especially because, this is not a spoiler, I mean, it starts with her being like this loving stepmother. She cannot wait to raise like little Snow White as her own. So it was really interesting to see how does she go from that to the evil queen.
It's okay.
Number 18 is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Last Olympian. Everyone was right. The last book was my favorite. Everyone was right. This was much more, I don't want to say adult, none of them were adult, but this was closer to YA. The humor in it was really good. The action was really good. I read this, did I read this summer?
Yeah, I think so.
So I read this like half a year ago, so I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I do remember that I was very pleasantly surprised. Not that I thought it'd be bad, but it was just better than I was expecting it to be. So this one gets a little messy. Number 17 is Gone Girl by Jillian Flynn. Yes, I know it is the large print edition. That doesn't mean that I'm an old woman. It just means that I found it on sale for $5, and it just happened to be the large print edition. Okay, get over it. But when I say large print, I'm talking large print. Anyways, now I didn't really like this one, and I think there's a couple of reasons. It reminds me a lot of a previous book that I've read, and it would spoil that book and this book, so I'm not going to say which one it is. Also, I just think with some things, I have had a shitty relationship in the past, excuse my language. And so then seeing these characters like be shitty in their marriage, because hello, it's about this woman that goes missing and then you find out that it's a shitty marriage, like that's the whole plot basically. I just didn't enjoy it. It made me uncomfortable. It was giving me anxiety as I was reading it, like, so I just think for that reason I didn't love it. I know most people absolutely love it. It's like one of the most popular books of all time. It just wasn't for me. Last year, the electronic book that I had, I forgot about, and then we had to change all the numbers around. This year, I'm remembering. So, number 16 is called Forgotten Lyrics. It is like a prologue to the Water Song series, and that's one of my favorite series, always has been growing up. I absolutely loved it, so that obviously gets a little bit of a higher rating. It was only 60 pages, and I found it somewhere online for free. I don't remember where. But yeah, I found it interesting, so that's why it goes higher up, but again, very short read. Number 15 is Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the 4th book in the Natural series, which obviously I love, as we know. This would have gone higher, except for like the end. People always say, oh, it's a really good book till the end, or it's so hard to end a series. The end can really change things. Why would you ever This series came out before the Inheritance games, but if you recognize Jennifer Lynn Barnes, because she wrote the Inheritance games, which is way more popular than the Naturals ever was. Yeah, obviously I'm not gonna say what the ending is, but the 3rd book was my favorite in the whole series. Closely tied with the 1st, but yeah, I don't... Ending! Anyways, yeah. If you have finished that series, or like finished that book, whatever, DM me at stories_books, because I want to talk about it, because what was that? Anyways, I love Jennifer Lynn Barnes. If you're watching this, I love you. I love your writing. The Naturals is one of my favorite series of all time. It's more just that the ending was mean. It's not that it was bad, it just was mean. Number 14 is One Was Lost by Natalie D. Richards. Natalie D. Richards is one of my all-time favorite authors. Again, my ranking, what I read in 2021, my number 1 book, I think it was my number 1 book, it was by her, it was 5 Total Strangers, which was so good. So I just had really high hopes for this one. It was still fantastic. It just wasn't, I think that's her best book. So then I kind of read them like getting better and better and better. This one was just like, I liked it. Natalie D. Richards, if you're watching, I loved it. It just wasn't as good as 5 Total Strangers. It was still pretty good though, but. Number 13 is The Last Beautiful Girl by Nina Lauren. I'm not gonna lie, I picked this one up because of the cover. This one is really interesting. I read this one in probably 24 hours. It is apparently, also look at how pretty. It is apparently a retelling of The Picture of Dorian Gray. I have never read that, but people say it is quite similar. So it's a little bit unfortunate. This one would have gone way higher, except that I started reading reviews on it as I was reading it, and someone was talking about how there's so many plot holes and things that aren't explained. And like, yeah. Like I have never had a book, okay, except for maybe This Is Not a Ghost Story. I have never had a book talk about so many things and then just not bring them up again and not, like, what was the point? So, like, for example, I don't even remember what number, but there's a number, and it's not like 13, it's like there's a number that keeps repeating throughout the story. This is a horror, by the way, shocker. There's a number that keeps repeating over and over and over again throughout the story. I don't remember what it is. And at the end, they just never say, like, what the point of the number was. Like, that's one tiny thing. There was like 7 or 8, whoa.
Sorry for my hurt about it.
There was like 7 or 8 things that were not explained, but that was one of them where I was like, do you know how quickly you could tie that up with one sentence? So anyways, it still was it was a fun read. Like, I'd recommend it. It was good. It was YA, but it felt like a cross between YA and adult. Plus there was cool, like, there's like texting and like emails and stuff in it, which I always think is cool, so. Number 12, which is shocking, is The Horror Hotel. Now I need to figure out, by Victoria Fulton and Faith McLaren. This was really interesting to me because this is a horror, and it is about a group of YouTubers who go and explore paranormal places. So I really like Ghost Adventures and Sam and Colby and all, like, people that do that. But it is very, I was gonna say loosely, but not, it is very, very, very closely based on the Cecil Hotel and the whole Eliza Lamb situation. I don't know if it's Elisa or Eliza.
I've heard Elisa.
Okay. probably is, but how it's spelled, because, with Elisa Lam, sorry, they dedicated the book to her, which I thought was so cool, especially because they're kind of using her story in a way. So obviously they twisted to make it a horror, and one of them's a medium and she's seeing ghosts around the hotel. It's also like a true crime. There's like murder mysteries in it and stuff, plus because in real life, I think it was Richard Ramirez stayed there and like killed people there. And so then they talk about a serial killer stayed here, so obviously. I thought it was just really cool that they dedicated it to her. I've never heard anything about this book. This is like the third book I've read from the publishing company Underlined, which sounds random, but I just find that I really like their books. They're always short and they're pretty good. Girl on the Run by Abigail Johnson, which I talked about previous. I think that was Underlined as well, but anyways. Yeah, it was just really interesting. I think part of the reason I liked this so much is because it was true crime and horror and paranormal. And also, I don't really have nightmares very often, and I was stupidly reading this and staying in a hotel with my mom in Halifax, and for the first time in my whole life, first of all, worst sleep I've ever had. Nothing wrong with the hotel, I just couldn't sleep, neither could mom, it was horrible. But for the first time in my life, I had like such a bad nightmare, and it was about like, I was in a hotel and there was all these creepy things happening, whatever. And I remember in my dream, I was trying to scream and I couldn't scream and it was awful. And my mom woke me up because I was like screaming with my mouth closed in real life. And that has never happened to me before, and it was horrifying. How was I supposed to ever sleep again? I don't know. But yeah, and I blame this book. So that's impressive that did that to me. So I haven't heard anything about this, but I really do recommend this. Number 11 is The Silent Patient by Michael him. I'm sure most of you have heard of this book, know of this book, maybe even have read it. I don't know why I didn't like it. I'm like, as I was ranking it, it just didn't feel right to put it closer to the top. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, but it's probably like a 4.5. I don't know. For some reason, it was very interesting. I was completely like interested in it as I was reading it. Maybe something with the ending. I don't know. I didn't even really call the ending, so I don't know why, but based on vibes only, that's why this is so low. Number 10 is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. He also wrote My Best Friend's Exorcism, I think. I'm almost positive that he's the author of that. Just put a little disclaimer if he isn't. Yeah. This was technically the first book I ever tabbed. I didn't have actual tabs yet. I only have blue and yellow, so I made it work. This one is also super interesting and loved it as I was going through it. If you like horror movies, you will like this book. There's a lot of references to horror movies, but they call them different things, but it's like a man in like a ghost like mask and like big black. I'm like, okay, so Scream, but they don't say that. You know what I mean? So it was interesting, and there was definitely like plot twists in it that were good, and all those things. And like I just said that I like, the chapters were pretty short, and in between every chapter was like letters or diary entries or whatever, stuff like that, which I really find interesting. But yeah, again, based on vibes only. I don't know. I think maybe I was trying to finish it in one day, so I stayed up late to read it, and maybe I just skimmed the end. I don't know. Based on vibes only. Number 9, I'm very excited to talk about, is Hawk by James Patterson. This is a spin-off for Maximum Ride. A lot of people were very unhappy when this came out because they're, just let it die, just let it die. If you know me, I love a good spin-off. TV show, sometimes. The book, yes. Think of all of Cassandra Clare's spin-offs. I have read all of them. And Maximum Ride was one of my favorite series growing up, and I would go through those books so fast. I remember learning, again, it was a little bit like Miss Peregrine's, where I was like, oh, it's over. And then I found out that there was a new book out. And I looked at my dad and I told him, and he said, oh, so we're going to the bookstore tomorrow. And I was like, yes, exactly. So I was really excited about this. I thought it wouldn't live up to it. It did. It just made my heart happy. And I couldn't believe how much I didn't remember about the original series. And as I was reading, it came back to me. I had to Google a couple things because I genuinely couldn't even remember characters, which is kind of crazy. But you don't even really have to read the first series to read this one. I would highly recommend it, but this is cool. They kind of took a dystopian twist on it, and yeah, I just found it really interesting. This is a duology, I believe. I know there's a second book. I own the second book. I think it's called City of the Lost, and I'm hoping to read it this year. Although it's not on my list. Anyways. Number 8 is Caribou by Stephanie Garber. I'm currently reading Legacy, which is the second book. This is the first book that I finished in 2022, so I remember very little. about it, but the imagery in this was insane. This is also very my vibe. Like, it's mystery, kind of a thriller, and takes place in a carnival at night, like an amusement park. This is everything I would like in a book. I did find it a little hard to get into because it is historical, and I'm not a huge historical person, but that really doesn't matter once you actually get to the game parts of it. And in between, like, a lot of the parts, there was like these, which I just thought was pretty. And there's a playlist at the end that the author created, and the playlist goes along, it's on Spotify, and it goes along with certain like sections of the book. So you can like read and like listen and get the vibe and that sort of thing. So yeah, super interesting. Lots of people love this book. I recommend it. I'm also one of them. Number 7 is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Shocker. Again, I have a review on this, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. There were a couple things that I didn't love. It's very YA. I wish if I was 5 years younger, this would probably be like one of my favorite books of all time. I mean, I rated it 5 stars. I'm going to read the rest of the series. I'm going to read a spin-off because she's creating a spin-off. I love spin-offs. I know I'm going to read all of them. It is incredible. The only things I would say, try to not focus too much on the puzzles because you will spend hours trying to figure out, like, picturing things. It'd be so cool as a movie or a TV show, but to picture and then you're handed what and then it went like what, it's almost like doing brain teasers, like the physical wooden brain teasers. It's kind of like that. You wouldn't want to have to describe that to someone in words, so I kind of would just skim over that and be like, oh cool. But with the success of this, I'm sure it'll be a book or I'm sure it will be a movie or a TV show or something, and I would love to see that. So yeah, I highly, highly recommend this if you like puzzles, mysteries, that sort of thing. Although I did guess the ending, but sometimes I often guess the ending, not to toot my own horn, so that doesn't say that too much. Number 6 is Good Girl, Bad Blood, which is the second book to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, which is apparently there's a TV show coming out soon, which I'm very excited about. I'm not going to say too much with this because A, it's a second book, so I don't want to spoil it, and B, Janelle has to read them. This one was as good as the second one. I guessed more things in this one than I guessed in the first one, but I was really worried to read it because I thought that it would be not as good, and no, it was still really good. And I remembered so much from the first book, like I didn't need a refresher really, so that I rarely get that in books, so that was really good. And I also tabbed this one. This was the last book I ever tabbed, and I probably ever will tab.
Wait, is that the second or third one?
Second.
You said it was as good as the second one.
We're gonna leave all of this in.
It's
as good as the first one. Yeah. The 5th book, The Honeys by Ryan Lasalla. This book is so good. This is now the book that's kind of putting him on the map. Like, he's written a couple other books. This is the one, and well deserved. This is a horror, again. It is not like, I know it doesn't look like a horror. This is not like any other horror I've ever read in my whole life. It's so interesting. The main character, their name is Mars. They're also gender fluid, and it is one of the best like descriptions of gender fluidity I've ever heard of. And they didn't like push too hard on it, and the whole book was filled with binaries, but only like as I was thinking about them. Like, it isn't pushed too heavily that that's the only purpose. It is a horror, but those concepts do come across, and I find that that's what made me think like, wow, this book is genius. Also, need to talk about how pretty it is. So it's a horror movie, like kind of about bees, or like surrounding bees. Also, I started reading it late at night. Don't start reading it late at night. I was reading a review on it before I started reading it, and someone said like, it's so scary, don't read it at night, and I was like, oh. I had to stay up for an extra hour because I was so scared. I read like 20 pages, and I was like, now I'm done. One of the most horrifying starts to a book I've ever read, but also I wanted to read it so bad. This is like, I feel like this should be my number 1 book. The only reason it is lower, I didn't personally love the ending. That's the only thing about it, but like, oh my god, this should have been higher. I'm realizing this should have been higher. This book, I can't say enough good things about this book. Anyways, there's like a bee embossed on the cover, and also the inside pages are like honeycomb, and they're like textured, and they look like honeycomb. So anyways, everyone should read this book. This book is so good. Number 4 is White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson. I'm realizing this should probably be switched with the Honeys, but that's okay. I read this one way more recently. I read this in the last couple weeks, and I explained the entire plot to Janelle because I read it the night before, and I read like the first 100 pages, but then I read like the rest of it all in one night, and it was so good. It was again a horror. I like what I like, but yeah, I don't even have very much to say on it. I can't spoil it, but it was really good. It is as good as everyone says it is. Number 3 is Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. So this is another one I got to. This is the first book in the Last Hours trilogy. The 3rd book is coming out in like 2 weeks. I'm very excited. Love me good Cassandra Clare book. I get this one mixed up with Chain of Iron, which is my 2nd book. So I can't even say very much about it, but it's gorgeous. It was super good. That's all I have to say. What do you know? Number 2, Chain of Iron. So Chain of Iron is the 2nd book, but I actually preferred the 2nd book. I found it really good. It's again historical fiction, which I really don't like historical fiction. These books changed my mind. And that's including the Clockwork series that everyone seems to prefer. I say seems to because I don't. The Clockwork trilogy, which I don't prefer to the Dark Artifices or the Mortal Instruments personally because it's historical fiction, but maybe I'm gonna have to reread them because if you didn't know, this series deals with characters from the Clockwork series, their children. And so then those people are still in it, but this is like a whole new generation of them, and yeah, the series is just so good. I can't say enough good things about it, and it is definitely worth reading. I can't believe how good the series is. Anyways, I never imagined in my wildest dreams. As much as people feel kind of the same as James Patterson with Maximum Ride, people feel like she's kind of like, I don't know what the phrase is, it's like beating the horse till it's dead or something. There's like a phrase like that. But she did so many more things in this that like have never been touched on in her other books. Like still she's able to pull stuff like that, which is really interesting. Plus, I'm hoping this isn't a spoiler, but Magnus is in this, which is really cool because he's in the Mortal Instruments. He's in like all of them because he's an immortal warlock, so he has been in all the books, so it's cool when he does his little cameos because it's just like a throwback to her first series. But yeah, even though everyone's like, oh, the Shadowhunter, blah, 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 everything she does is Shadowhunter. Yeah, because it's fantastic. Side note, I reread The City of Bones. I believe that was last year now, and I couldn't believe like how young adult that writing was. It's so cool. I guess I just never realized because I was maturing as her writing was maturing. Her writing is getting so much better. Her writing in these books is like insane. It's so good. And my number 1 book of the year, because I'm the most basic bitch on the planet, is Verity by Colleen Hoover. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. I love thrillers. I have never read a thriller like this in my life. I'm so embarrassed that this is my number 1 book. Let's like pretend for vibes that The Honeys by Ryan Lasalla is my number 1 book. This is just, I wish. Anyways, I'm not a Colleen Hoover fan because I don't like romance. So this is her only thriller. I heard she's coming out with a new thriller, which is exciting. I'll definitely read that. And apparently Layla is like sort of a thriller. My friend is reading that and she's gonna let me know. Yeah, I mean, the whole internet has talked about this book. I've heard some people really don't like it. Most people like it a lot, even if they don't like Colleen Hoover. I am one of those people. Do I feel like Colleen Hoover is a little bit overhyped? Don't hate me for that. That's my own personal opinion. But this one is fantastic. I will say. I love this one. So, and those are all the books that I read in 2022. I had a last minute idea just now. Janelle doesn't even know about this. I'm going to read very quickly, rapid fire, all the books I want to read in 2023. I'm going to start, these are not in any particular order, and I'm going to start with, because I already said I need to add it, City of the Lost, which is the 2nd book by James Patterson in the Hawk duology. Legacy, which is the 2nd Caraval, The Hawthorne Legacy, which is the 2nd The Inheritance Games, As Good as Dead, which is the 3rd A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Belladonna, which I own and I'm so excited for, no spoilers, Once Upon a Broken Heart, which I just bought, and I read like the first 10 pages just to get the vibes. Vibes are good, very good. Also by Stephanie Garber, the author of Caraval. Six of Crows, because I didn't get to it this year. Scythe, because I also didn't get to it. Reread Slated. A Map of Days, The Girl on the Train, because I'm shocked I haven't read that one. The Whisper Man, Catching Fire, because those are ones I didn't get to. Then I have Horror Store, which is by Grady Hendrix. It's like a play on IKEA. It's not supposedly an IKEA, but it's like these workers are trapped in an IKEA overnight and all these weird things are happening. So I'm very, very, very interested for that one. It's also apparently like a horror comedy, which I've never read. The Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which I've heard lots of good things about. NOS 4A2, come Christmas time, I'm going to do it this year. The First to Die at the End, which is the 2nd They Both Die at the End, or it's like the prologue, whatever, which I own. All I put down is the title, and this one's not a very well-known one, so I need to look it up. I want to read a book called Hide. I will put a picture, one of us will put a picture up here. It's by Kirsten White. This is what it looks like. Ooh. And it is, again, an abandoned amusement park horror. It's very me. So I definitely want to read that one. The Wicked Will Rise, which is the second Dorothy Must Die, because I didn't have that on my list this year, therefore forgetting about it. 5 Survive, which is by Holly Jackson. It just came out. I read summary, and it sounds a lot like 5 Total Strangers by Natalie D. Richards, which is one of my favorite books, but I think it might be a little too similar, so we'll just see. Ghost Eater, which I don't remember who that's by. We'll put it up here. It's another horror. I've been wanting to read it for a while. I need to reread Nil, again, because of the third one. I want to read The Arsonist, which I'll put up here. I think it's by Stephanie Oakes. I have owned it, again, for probably 6 years. Haven't read it. Don't even really remember what it's about. I think it's a mystery. I'm just trying to knock down books on my physical TBR. The Beast Within, which is the second in the Serena Valentino Villains series. Survive the Night. I was like, I already read that. There's a book called Survive the Night by Daniel Beckett. It's not that one. It's Survive the Night by Riley Sager, who's a very popular horror. Again, it's a horror. Be shocked. 7 Dirty Secrets by Natalie D. Richards. It's the one, she has 2 books out I haven't read. That's one of them. The Second Life of Ava Rivers is one I bought for $5 and almost didn't buy, so now I feel like I have to read it to prove to myself that it was worth buying it, because I hemmed and hawed over it for a long time and then bought it. Gallant, which I've heard like not very good things about, which sucks because I thought it'd be really good. I will also put a picture up here. That one's pretty popular, so I'm sure some of you guys will recognize it. Shudder, which has again been on my physical TBR for years. I just want to get it off. And Shudder as in 2 T's, not 2 D's. So it's like a camera shutter. That one's a mystery. It kind of sounds like a Good Girl's Guide to Murder sort of thing. And the last one is The Carrow Haunt by Darcy Coates, who is like an up-and-coming horror author. And I own his anthology of short stories called Small Horrors, and I've read a couple. They're really good. But so this will be my first novel of his that I'm reading. That's it. I'm done now. It's a lot of work. Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Goodreads. Goodreads is Larissa Story. The rest are all Stories books. And I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys. That's another series. Blah, blah, blah. I wanted to read Nil on Fire by Lynn. Oh my god. That's okay. This is just a chill video. We're just relaxed. We're just besties. We're hanging. I'm trying to go quacker. Oh god. Okay.